Blog Talk Radio.
Chiamo Afuraitkaitnit Dinde Jira Kwesi Radneta Akan Maruka Ojirafo Ojira. Greeting all Afuraitkaitnit people, African people. My name is Ojirafo Kwesi Radneta Akan in North America within Ojirama, the purified nation Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit people in the Western Hemisphere. Yes, we thank you once again for tuning into our broadcast. We're opening up the chat room right now. If you have any questions, comments, you'd like to interact in the chat room, you must log in as a user in order to interact. If you have any questions or comments on the phone line, just simply hit the number 1 so that we can see that your hand is raised. I'm from broadcasting for a number of months. Many of you are aware that we recently released a few months ago our film Amarukafo Adebisa, African American Ancestral Divination. So we've been going from city to city screening the film. We've received positive reviews from the various states that we've gone, over 14 states that we've gone to screen the film, including also internationally to Canada. We've screened the film, positive reviews and so forth. We also recently released the film online, so you can download the film now, watch the film now. You can rent the film from our website. You can also purchase the download from the website. You can also purchase the DVD as well. So you can either watch it online on demand, or you can also purchase the DVD. You can see that on our website, ojirafo.com/amarukafo_adebisa.html. So we've been, going through that process. We've taken a hiatus from broadcasting. We just started back a couple of broadcasts last week, and now we're going to put certain information out on certain topics as things arise. So we may not typically broadcast on a weekly basis. We may not always have that every single week, but as information arises, we need to address these broadcasts. On Joda Monday nights, we always have Akan Numerology, ancient, authentic Akan ancestral religion, where we deal specifically with the Akan expression of ancestral religion first and foremost, because we are Akan. Secondly, because of the misinformation being propagated regarding Akan culture, ancestral religion, ritual practice, cosmology, and so forth, not only from individuals in the Western Hemisphere, but also from individuals on the continent of Afuraitkaitnit, Africa, who have been infected by pseudo-religion, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, white culture in general. Therefore, that infection manifests in their expression of Akan culture. So when people go seeking Akan culture and so forth, and religion and cosmology from individuals who have been infected with white culture, that infection manifests in their presentation of traditional culture. So it looks traditional, but undergirding that traditional look, you have cosmological corruptions and so forth. So we deal with ancient, authentic Akan ancestral religion, which deals with our ancient ancestral origins in ancient Khanit, which is a title of ancient Nubia, the Khan land, first land, foremost land. Some of our people migrated from ancient Khanit land to West Afuraitkaitnit over 2,000 years ago, reestablished the Khanit Empire, the so-called Ghana Empire, Akanna Empire in the western part of the continent. Nearly a millennia later, some of our people migrated from that region further south towards the Savannah and Forest Belt regions, in the regions of contemporary Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, and the Republic of Ghana, and we reestablished Akanna civilization in that region. And then centuries subsequent to that, because of warfare and so forth, some of us were taken as prisoners of war from those regions and forced into North, Central, South America, the Caribbean, and Europe during the Musuo Kessie, the Great Perversity, the enslavement era. So this is how Akan people ended up in the Western Hemisphere. However, we maintained our ancestral religious practices. Thus, in Suriname and South America, you find the Akan tradition called Winti. In Guyana in South America, the Akan tradition is called Komfa. Winti is from the Akan term Huinti. Komfa is from the Akan term Komfo. You'll find the Akan tradition in Jamaica called Obia from the Akan term Obai. And in the United States and North America, the Akan tradition is called Hoodoo from the Akan term Undu, meaning medicine from roots, trees, plant life. It also means to become heavy with the spirit through spirit possession, spirit communication. So we maintained our ancestral religious practice as Akan people in the Western Hemisphere, and we were empowered and guided by our ancestral religious practice on the best means by which to wage war against the whites and their offspring through taking up metal armaments to wage physical warfare, as well as using root work, conjure, in the capacity of chemical and biological warfare that we use to wage war against our enemies, the whites and their offspring. Because of our incessant waging of war against the whites and their offspring, we forced the end of enslavement in the Western Hemisphere. So this is what we deal with: Akan Ancestral Religion, Ancient Authentic Akan Ancestral Religion, AKANFO NANASOM. And tonight we want to get into our topic. And before we hit that, we just want to make sure everybody knows online we've started that process. So just give us 1 second. But again, if you have any questions or comments on the phone line, hit the number 1 so we can see that your hand is raised. If you have any questions or comments in the chat room, you must log in as a user in order to interact in the chat room. We just want to post a message real quick. And as we're putting this information out and posting the information, we'll also update people on our upcoming Dubaako Akradinbosom training intensive and ritual retreats that are coming up in Savannah, Georgia, the end of this month, May 25th and 26th. June 2nd, Washington, D.C., June 9th, Atlanta, Georgia, June 15th in Philadelphia, June 16th in Toronto, Canada, June 29th in Durham, North Carolina. So when you look at our page, the Dubaako page, we still have a few spaces at the different retreats for registration. Some spaces are still open, so if you would like to attend the retreat, you must register. We do have a deposit for registration, 50% to reserve your space, and the final 50% in a few weeks, by the end of May and so forth. So when you go to our Dubaako page, and you'll see the link in the promotional information for this broadcast on our website, you can register in that way. Okay, so let me pull up one more thing and we'll get started. All right, so in this particular broadcast, we call the broadcast Nkanesem, Akan Numerology of Akradinbosom, from Khanit to Hoodoo. Nkanee is the Akan term for numbers. When we say Nkanesem, that means the affairs or the issues or the context of numbers and what we're dealing with. It's the same kind of definition or referencing what some will call numerology, but it's beyond what the whites and their offspring call numerology. So this is why we use our own ancestral terms from our own ancestral language, which has proper definitions. So the Akradinbosom are the Abosom, the deities, the spirit forces in creation that govern and animate the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies that govern the 7-day Akan week. And as we've shown in our books, the 7-day week was established by our people tens of thousands of years ago in Afuraitkaitnit, and some of our people migrated to the Near East and took that 7-day week with them. And this is why in ancient Sumer, later Babylon, later Akkadian Empire, and so forth. You have the 7-day week, and the whites in Arab Spring learned about that from invading those areas. But then also when they invaded North Afuraitkaitnit outside of Kemet, they came in contact with that 7-day week as well. So we established that tens of thousands of years ago. The solar, lunar, and planetary bodies that govern the 7-day week, that cycle, the spiritual forces that animate those solar, lunar, and planetary bodies are the Akradinbosom, these divinities that are connected to us. They also govern all natural cycles in creation. They also, these 11 divinities, male and female divinities, also govern the 11 major body systems within the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, or African black body. That includes the endocrine system, the reproductive system, the immune system, the lymphatic system, the nervous system, the renal system, the circulatory system, the respiratory system, digestive system, the exocrine system, and the skeletal system, and so forth. So we have these 11 major systems. These deities govern these 11 major systems. They also govern the different aspects of the body or the body systems in the Earth Mother, governing the black earth, the river waters, the ionosphere or thermosphere, the inner core of Earth, the red earth, the rain waters of Earth, the core of Earth in relation to the inner core and so forth, the winds and magnetosphere, the stratosphere, all these different aspects of Earth, and also as well as the polar axis of Earth and so forth. So we have these different aspects of the Earth Mother's body that are governed by these 11 major divinities, the different cycles in creation governed by these 11 divinities, the natural cycles in creation, 11 body systems, as well as the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies that govern the 7-day week cycle. And of course, that 7-day week cycle you'll find even internally within us, within that chronobiological cycle called the circa septon cycle, which means a 7-day cycle where different changes take place within our physical bodies on that circadian rhythm every 7 days. And it's aligned with the 7-day week cycle. So all these different things are directly related. So these are the Akradinbosom. They're called Akradinbosom because the Kradin is the soul name, and in our Akan tradition, we are named after these divinities. We're named Kwesi and Akoswia, Esi or Kwajo and Ajua, or Kwabena and Abena, Kwakua, Kweku and Akua, Yao, Ya, Abba, Kofi and Afua, or Afi, or Afia, Kwame and Ama, and Amemeniwa, and the variations of these different names were named after these divinities when we're born on their particular day of the week. That's an indication that we were assigned to them pre-incarnation, and therefore they made sure we came into the world on their day of the week, and we take on that Kradin so that people understand, number one, what divinity governs us, but of course for us, the divinity that governs our Okra, our soul, our divine consciousness, the deity in our head region. So this is why we call them the Akradinbosom. Now, when it comes to numbers, Nkanee, as they're called in our Akan tradition, there are numbers associated with these divinities, sacred numbers associated with these divinities. The sacredness of the number has to do with the function of the deity in creation, how their energy expression manifests in creation in general and in relation to other deities as well. Just like you have different organs in your body, they have their own form, they have their own function, but then they also function in relationship to other organs and glands and so forth. The Abosom, the forces of nature, the Orisha, the Vodou, and of course these 11 divinities in our Akan culture, they exist, of course, all over in every Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit culture by different names. We have our own relationship with them and how we approach them based on our ethnic group and so forth. In our Akan tradition, we have our own unique form of expression when we align with them and invoke them and communicate with them, be possessed by them and learn from them and so forth. Every group has their own approach to dealing with these divinities based on how they've dealt with them, how they've migrated, how they've aligned with them in different parts of the world and so forth as they've migrated from different parts of Afuraitkaitnit, Africa, and outside. Akan people have our own approach. So everybody has a relationship with these divinities. But the forces in nature, the deities, are the divine organs within the great divine body of the Supreme Being. They have their own form and function as great organs and organ systems within the great divine body of creation. But then they also have a relationship with one another, and those relationships are defined. Now, when we talk about Nkanee or numbers, we're not just talking about the nonsense of so-called numerology as put forward by the whites and their offspring. The Greeks didn't establish quote-unquote numerology. That's nonsense. Pythagoras, a fictional character, didn't establish numerology. The Kabbalah is not the foundation of numerology. The Kabbalah is full of misinformation. Gnosticism is full of misinformation. Sufism is full of misinformation. So it's not esoteric, it's nothing sacred or occult or deep about any of these pseudo-religious practices. They're corruptions just like the exoteric corruptions. Christianity, the exoteric expression, Gnosticism, the quote-unquote esoteric, they're both corruptions. Islam and Sufism, Judaism or Hebrewism and Kabbalism, they're both corruptions. The same is true of Hinduism, Taoism, Buddhism, Jainism, and these other corruptions of fragments of our culture. So they do not hold any secrets to any numerology. In reality, the numbers are a reflection of the functioning of Abosom deities in creation. Therefore, if you cannot communicate with the divinity, if you cannot invoke the Abosom, the Orisha, the Vodou, communicate with them, be possessed by them, communicate with them through spirit possession and spirit communication. If you cannot do that, you have no understanding at all with regard to numerology. The whites and their offspring are incapable racially of communicating with any divinity, any deity. That means white Europeans, white Americans, white Hindus, white Asians, white Arabs, white Hispanics, white Latinos, Latinas, white pseudo-Native Americans who are just migrants from Asia. None of the whites and their offspring have ever, nor will ever be able to communicate with any deity. Therefore, they have no capacity to understand what quote-unquote numerology is. So it's not just about reading numbers and talking about life path numbers and manufacturing some philosophy based on some fragmented information about what a number means. That is nonsense. Even when they talk about life path numbers and you give somebody your birth date and they line up numbers with letters and so forth, first of all, the English alphabet, the script itself is a corruption of the phonetic script from ancient Khanit. The so-called Hebrew and Arabic alphabets are corruptions of the Proto-Sinaitic alphabet, which is derived directly from the phonetic script, which is a shorthand version of the Medutu from ancient Kemet, the hieroglyphs from ancient Kemet, and so forth. So when you're dealing with these scripts, whether it's Arabic or so-called Hebrew or the Latin characters, Greek characters, and eventually English and so forth, they're corruptions of real characters. The numbers associated with the letters are inaccurate. So therefore, when somebody's aligning an English letter with a number, they're typically engaged in inaccuracies. Going further, when they talk about your birth date, we're not in the year 2019. So what are you adding up 2, 0, 1, and 9 for? We're not in the year 2019. 2019 years ago, nothing happened. The fictional cartoon character Jesus didn't exist of any form or of any race. So nothing took place 2019 years ago. This is not the year 2019. If you're trying to add that as part of your life path and so forth, that is nonsensical. It is inaccurate. The months of the year established by the whites and their offspring, these are not accurate either. The year does not begin on January 1st. So therefore, that is not the first month of the year. February is not the second month of the year. March is not the third month. So when you're adding these months up, inaccurate. Even the days of the months. The days are not 30, the months, astronomical months are not 30 days each. So when you're saying this is the third day of the month or the 10th day of the month, that's not accurate. There are 13 constellations that cross the ecliptic over the course of 365 and a quarter days. Each one of those astronomical months are different lengths. Some of them, one of them is 7 days long, one of them is 45 days long. You have 32 days, 25 days. So when you say you're born on the 10th day of a specific month in this year, none of that is accurate. So if you add all of those numbers up, you're going to end up with inaccuracies. And then you're associating numbers with English letters, or some people will try to associate them with so-called Hebrew letters and so forth. Still, you're going to come up with inaccuracies. And then the qualities associated with the numbers that the whites and their offspring glean bits and pieces and fragments of information from ancient Kemet and try to align them with these qualities. You have a combination of fragmented, accurate information with a great deal of misinformation, and therefore our people are just manufacturing ideas and repeating misinformation from the whites and their offspring. So they get a number, they come together, sum up some number, then they start pontificating about what this number possibly means, give you some vague information that can apply to anybody's life situation, and then people get excited and say, wow, that really happened to me. It's nonsensical. So when you're talking about real, actual Nkanesem, these issues dealing with Nkanee, with actual numbers associated with deities, then you're talking about a different reality. You're talking about reality in the true sense. If you took a tuning fork and caused it to oscillate, then it begins to generate a set of sound vibrations, and it radiates and reverberates those sound vibrations in the space that you're at. So kind of like a little miniature sun, it begins to radiate some energy once you make it oscillate. If you took another tuning fork and placed it near that tuning fork and caused the first one to oscillate, then the second one will begin to oscillate as well, and it will oscillate or vibrate at the same frequency as the first tuning fork. It will send energy across from the first tuning fork, will reach the other one, cause it to oscillate at the same frequency. But what just took place is first you had one instrument, it was radiating a group of sound vibrations that filled up the space that you're in. Then you took another instrument, those sound vibrations or vibrational frequencies reached one instrument across space to the other instrument, caused it to begin to oscillate. But now that energetic connection between one instrument and the other created a field of energy between the two that didn't exist when it was just one instrument oscillating. That field of energy, which becomes contractive to a large degree because there are two instruments and there's a field in between them. Now you have two. There's a different expression of energy than when you had just one radiating energy outwardly from itself in a centrifugal fashion. Now you have another entity introduced into the mix and a field of energy is created. If you added a third tuning fork and now the energy is moving through three entities, you're generating a different field of energy that's different from the field that was generated from two tuning forks oscillating and so forth, and that relationship between them. And if you added more, 4, 5, 6, and so forth, all the way up to 11 different entities, now you have different expressions of energy. This is where, quote unquote, numerology or Nkanesem really comes from. When you're talking about forces in nature that govern all natural cycles in creation. The Akradinbosom govern all natural cycles in creation, governing the black earth, river waters, ionosphere, which is the thermosphere, the inner core of earth, the rainwaters of earth, the red earth, the atmosphere, the core of earth, the winds and so forth, the polar axis, the stratosphere, these different aspects of creation, and then also the 11 different systems within your body, governing all natural cycles of creation. We're talking about a cyclical manifestation of energy that's sustaining creation, sustaining the earth and sustaining creation. Each one of these divinities, these forces in nature, radiate a specific configuration of forces or energetic forces, vibrations that can be measured, and their relationship to one another can be measured. Just like the one tuning fork beginning to oscillate, it vibrates at a certain frequency, a certain sound. Then you grab another tuning fork and put it near it, and it vibrates at the same sound and the same frequency, and you can take note of that. You can notate that. You can quantify it. You can measure it. You can even measure the vibrational frequency to let people know this is what happened. It's the same with regard to the forces in nature as they operate through creation. They generate a certain configuration of vibrations as they move through creation. Fiery deities and fiery energy moving fast, generating, high vibrations and so forth. Cool and watery and earthy energies, more slow moving vibrations and so forth. The waves and rates are slower. When you quantify that, it's different, quote unquote, numbers and so forth. So there's a relationship between the way the deities move through creation, a fiery force in creation, a cool, watery force in creation, an earthy force in creation, an airy force in creation, and the kind of vibrational frequencies that they generate that can be notated, that can be quantified, that can be replicated when you engage in ritual practice. This is what we're talking about. When you communicate with the forces of nature, you can be possessed by them, by fiery force, by a cool, watery force, by an earthy force, and so forth. When you can align with them, when you engage in divination and communicate directly with them, and they communicate directly with you, now you have an understanding of how they operate in creation and what their relationships are with the other deities. This is what we're talking about when we talk about quote unquote numerology, but in reality, Nkanesem. And we preserve this information and this ritual practice not only from ancient Akan ancestral religion on the continent, but all the way into Akan ancestral religion in North America in the Hoodoo tradition. So when we're named after these divinities and we invoke these divinities on a regular basis, for example, Akradinbosom, the divinity that governs your crowd, your soul, the deity that governs your head. You're born on a certain day, for example, a male born on Sunday, or a Kwesida, Awusida, named Kwasi or Kwesi. That means the divinity, the Kra, the deity that dwells in the head region, was directed by Amenet and Amen, or Inyamewa, and Inyame, the supreme being, to take up residence in the head region of that individual, bathed with the energy of the divinity Awusi, who is Al-Sar and Chikamet, Awusi or Awusi and Akan. And so a male born on Awusida or Sunday, that means he was assigned to the deity Awusi pre-incarnation. That is the divinity that governs his function in creation. The soul or the deity that dwells in the head region is a child of that great divinity Awusi. So that spiritual force is installed in the head region of the spirit body. So when I come into the world as a Kwesi, that divinity is installed in my head region as my spirit's brain. I will align with that force in creation. That force in creation in my head region will direct my functioning in creation. I will have an Awusi type function in creation. I will manifest that kind of energy in creation that's different from somebody who was born on Benada and is a Kwa Bena and so forth and has a different energy complex. I can align with that force in nature. We have the Akra Guare, or soul washing ritual practice, where at least once a week on the day that we were born, the weekday that we're born, we go to our Akradinbosom shrine and align with that force in creation, renew that energy within us, realign ourselves, we could reconfigure ourselves and so forth on a weekly basis. We're aligning with the divinity, but also, of course, that number that's associated with the divinity is a direct expression of the deity's functioning in creation. It's not just some philosophical understanding of, 4 means foundation and nonsense like that. It's a direct reflection of you aligning with the deity, aligning your energy with that divinity, finding out how that divinity functions, learning how to function in different situations in life, grounded and centered in the energy of the divinity that governs you and so forth, and how you relate to other people, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people of different energy complexes, and how you can harmonize, how you can build and so forth based on your relationships. If you have a cool energy and you're dealing with somebody with a fiery energy and so forth, how do you combine those energies in your functions in creation for nation building, for healing, for medicine, for defense, for creativity, for innovation, whatever it is. Now, we can prove that there's an association of these numbers, Nkanee numbers, with the divinities. We can prove what we're saying. We're not just manufacturing little pseudo-philosophical ideas. When we talk about the 11 Akradinbosom, the forces in nature that govern the 11 body systems and the different cycles in creation, first and foremost, you find a precedent for that in ancient Kemet. So in the pyramid text, the Meru text in ancient Kemet, for example, when you look in the text of Unas, and you see this on our Akradinbosom page, in utterance 219 and sections 178 and then on to 180 and forward, they list the name of the deities of the what they will call the Paut or Pesjet, Kat, or the quote-unquote lesser Ennead or the small company of the deities. Then you have the Pesjet, the Paut, which is the great company of the divinities, the lesser company of the deities or the smaller company of the divinities, that lists 11 deities. It is a grouping of 11 divinities. That is a sacred grouping, and you'll find that sacred grouping of 11 deities in the pyramid text of Unas in utterance 219. The most ancient religious text compositions yet unearthed in the world are the pyramid text, the Meru text, and you'll find this sacred grouping of 11 divinities in the pyramid text. Now, and of course, there are other sacred groupings of divinities as well. The 42 assessors of Ma'at, the 8 primordial deities of Kemenu, the 4 sons of Heru. You have a number of sacred groupings of deities, just like you have a number of different organ systems within your body, and they have number groupings as well. When you have the endocrine system with the various endocrine glands, the ductless glands and so forth, you have the cardiovascular system, you have the renal system. Each one of these different systems has their own grouping of glands or organs, own grouping of deities, a sacred number grouping. When you see the sacred number groupings of divinities in ancient Kemet, whether it's 42 or 4 or 8 or 9 or 11, these are the same collections of organ systems within your body, because the deities are the great divine organs within the great divine body. This is why it's not just one sacred number grouping of divinities. You have multiple sacred groupings depending on what aspect of creation you're talking about. When we're talking about the 11 Akradinbosom, we're talking about the natural cycles that continue to perpetuate life in creation and renew life in creation. We're not talking about the primordial divinities that brought the universe into being. That is Ka and Kaed and Henhu and Henhud and Nun and Nunet and Ra and Raet and Ptah and so forth, and the different primordial divinities. But then once creation comes into being, then it needs to be constantly renewed and recycled and perpetuated in a harmonious fashion. And the Akradinbosom deal with the natural perpetuation of these life cycles and cycles of renewal and creation. So that's why they have a different role. Now, the pyramid text align or lay out, delineate that sacred grouping of 11 divinities. That's ancient. Then we come to West Afuraitkaitnit, and you have a story, for example, one of the Nkanesem, one of the stories in our Akan tradition, titled How the Abosom, the Deities, Came into the World. And we have a link to that story in the on our Akradinbosom page. You can go to the link and you'll find that. And when you look at that story, they talk about how the Abosom came into the world, how these forces in nature came into the world. And when they're talking about the story, they're talking about 11 siblings, and those 11 siblings, the head of those 11 siblings was called Duko, and Duko means 11. And each one of the siblings was called by the name of their number. So it was 11 siblings. They went through trials on earth that they overcame. Then they were sent to the heavenly realm with Nyakumpon, which is Ra, and of course Nyakunton, which is Riot. They went through a certain number of trials in the heavenly region that they overcame. Then they were sent to the ancestral realm and the realm of Owo Berima and Owo Ba, the male and female forces of death, and they overcame those obstacles in that region as well. And once they overcame obstacles on earth, in the heavenly region, and in the quote-unquote underworld of the ancestral realm, then it was declared that they will become the Abosom. They will become these forces in nature and so forth. And they were headed up by their leader was Dukon, which is the Akan term for 11, and each one of the divinities who would later become the Abosom, they had their names were the names of the Akan numbers. So when you look at Akan numbers, the numbering system, you have Bako, ABN, ABSA, N9, Nnum, Nsia, Nson, Awochwe, Nkron, Edu, and Dubaako. So these are 1 through 10, and then 11 begins the Du cycle, and so forth. But each one of these siblings had a number. They were named after these numbers. So, for example, let's read a really quick section just so you can get in, and you can look at this. You can look at this. We have the link on our Akradinbosom page. You can look at that story, but it's on page 190 in the book Akan Ashanti Folk Tales by Rattray, where they simply, about 100 years ago, he was sitting down, writing down the stories of the Akan people, the Asante people told him these stories, so he has the stories in English as well as the translation, or it has the stories in the Akan language and then the translation in English. So, for example, in the beginning, it's talking about a woman, and she was talking about these 11 quote-unquote children that were causing her some problems. She wanted to have something to do with them. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but the mother set off and went home. She went to her children. She said, "You must go to the plantation beneath the silk cotton tree. There are pumpkins there. Go and pick them and come back." And the children set off, reached the silk cotton tree, and number 11 told his siblings. So number 11, he said, number 1, stand still. Number 2, stand still. Number 3, stand still. Number 4, stand still. Number 5, stand still. Number 6, stand still. Number 7, stand still. Number 8, stand still. Number 9, stand still. Number 10, stand still. And I myself, number 11, I have stood still. Number 11 then addressed them, saying, "Do you not know the sole reason why others said we must go and pick pumpkins? And they said, no. And he said, she has told this silk cotton tree, the spirit of the silk cotton tree, that when we go there, it must pluck branches and beat us. Therefore, all of you cut sticks and throw them against the silk cotton tree." So what she was trying to do was get them to stand under the silk cotton tree, and the spirit of the silk cotton tree, once the 11 siblings were going to stand up under the silk cotton tree, he was going to drop 11 of his branches down and hit each one of them. So number 11, he said, wait. He told each one of them individually, stand still. Don't go forward under that tree, because this was a setup. We're going to get hit with these branches. In fact, pick up some branches right now and throw them into the tree and see what happens. And they picked up some branches and threw them against the tree. The silk cotton tree, the spirit the silk tree thought that must mean that the children were all standing up under the tree, and then he dropped all of his branches that would have fell on them, but they fell to the ground. And number 11 told his siblings, see, this is what happened. We were being set up. We would have all been attacked or, bludgeoned by these huge branches if we had gone and sat up under the tree, but I saw better. So, and then more things took place. But the key here is when it said number 11 told his siblings, number 1, stand still, number 2, stand still, so forth. If you look at the actual translation in Akan, number 11, the English translation for the name of the child. For example, you something named Kwame Nsia. Nsia means 6 or 6th born. So Kwame Nsia means Kwame, who was born on a Minida, a Saturday. He's a child of the divinity Min Amin Min. That's why Kwame Minna or Kwame, a servant Kwa of the deity Min or Min Amin, and so forth. That shows what governs his cry, his soul. But then in he was born on the 6th day. He was he was born as the 6th child. He was the 6th born. If he was Kwame Nson, that means he was the 7th born. If somebody was Adjoa Mensa, and so forth, that means she was the 3rd born. So we're named, we have birthplace names, what cycle that we were born in, what number we were born in, and so forth. Duko, if somebody is Kojo Duko, that was Kojo, who was the 11th born. So in English, when they say number 11 told his siblings this, or number 11 said, in the translation it says, Duko se Eko Jina, Eno Jina, Esa Jina, Enine Jina, Enum Jina, Insia Jina, Nson Jina, Nwotwe Jina, Nkron Jina, Du Jina, Me Ara Duko Majina, which is saying, number 11, Duko, he said, Eko Jina, number 1, stand still. Eno Jina, number 2, stand still. Esa, number 3, stand still. Number 4, stand still. The original 11 siblings who became the Abosom, how the Abosom came into the world, their names, their titles are numbers. So there's a direct relationship between the 11 Akradinbosom and quote-unquote numerology or Nkanee or Nkanesem. Each one of them has their own number. Now we can further prove that by their functions in creation. So for example, the number 1, Ekun, means 1, Eno means 2, Esa means 3. So look at Esa meaning 3. And then Abiesa meaning 3 and so forth, or Miensa meaning 3 in Asante or Abiesa in the Akwamu dialect and so forth, but the root is Sa or Esa meaning 3. How can we prove that not only here in the story of in the Akan tradition, Esa means 3, and that's the name of the 3rd sibling, which will later become the 3rd Abosom and so forth. But Esa meaning 3, that's the name of the deity. Let's see if we can prove there's a relationship between that. And then N9 means 4. Let's see. The Akradinbosom, the first day of the week, is Awusida, which is Sunday. Awusi, the divinity Awusi or Asar and so forth, governing that, the male divinity. The second day is Joda, which is Monday, the day of the moon and so forth. Ajua, which is Aset in ancient Kemet. She's also called Achuat in ancient Kemet as well, and that's the same as Ajua in Akan. That's the second day of the week and so forth. And the orb that we're dealing with is the moon. Then the 3rd day of the week is also the 3rd orb, the celestial body. That is the planet Benna or Abenna. The whites in offspring call it the planet Mars. Benna, the root Ben or Bene, means red, and so forth. Mars is called the red planet. The deity, the male deity is Benna. He's also called Bedat in ancient Kemet, Heru Bedat and Heru Bedet. The female divinity is Abena. She's called Benat in ancient Kemet. She's also called Sekhmet in ancient Kemet. And Sekhmet or Sechimet in ancient Kemet is also Sechima in Akan. So she has the same two titles in Akan, Abena and Sechima. She's called Bedat and Sechimet or Sechimat in ancient Kemet. Same two titles, the same divinity. So, Sekhmet or Abena, she's a warrioress. She's shown as the lioness divinity. She's the divine enforceress of divine order. She executes divine justice. She's a divine killer, wages war to exterminate the enemy. She's a divine huntress. She's also a divine hatress. She executes that feminine force of divine hate, which is one half of divine order. You have divine law, love, and divine hate. Divine law and love is the same word. Ma'an, ma'at govern law or quote-unquote love. Herubedeti and Sekhmet deal with contractive pole of order, which is divine hate. The destruction of disorder for the purpose of maintaining the integrity of divine order. So Heru Behudet and Sekhmet, or Benna and Abena, they govern the contractive pole of divine order, and the expansive pole of divine order is law, so-called love. The contractive pole is hate, where you exterminate or you eradicate disorder so you can maintain divine order. Your immune and lymphatic systems in your body are the contractive pole of divine order. They're the male and female forces of divine hate. They destroy cancerous cells that are constantly developing within your body. They kill them, they isolate them and expel them from the body in order to maintain the integrity of the order of your body. If you didn't have an immune and lymphatic system that is constantly killing, waging war, exterminating the enemy every moment of every day, if divine hate or rejection wasn't operant within your body every moment of every day, then your immunity will fall apart and you will fall apart. The capacity for you to sustain yourself and continue to exist is totally dependent on divine hate operating within your body. And we show, of course, in our book, Madanechi, Divine Law, Love, and Divine Hate, that law and hate are the two poles of divine order. Hate is part of the name of Sekhmet as well as Heru Behudet. Hate has always been divine. Hate is a deity. There's a male deity of hate, female deity of hate. Hate or Het is included in their name in the hieroglyphs. Heru Behudet is called Heru, Heti Het, the chief of hate. Sekhmet is called Het Antiu, or the hatress of the Antiu, the destroyer or the attacker of the Antiu, and so forth. We also show the term hate is not coming from the Proto-Germanic or Indo-European language phylum. It comes directly prior to that from ancient Kemet. The Indo-European language phylum learned that term from ancient Kemet and included it, and of course it ended up in English and so forth. So if you look at Sekhmet, Abena, divine hatress, divine warrioress, divine killer, waging war against the enemies of Ra and so forth, destroying, killing, and so forth. But then you also find that Sekhmet not only kills the enemies in the community, in the nation and so forth, but she also wages war internally. She's also a divine healeress. So much so that her physicians, some of her physicians, the class of physicians, will call Sunut. Sunut is the title for doctors. Her priests and priestesses will call physicians. So just like other deities have their own priests and priestesses, Sekhmet had priests and priestesses of Sekhmet, but a class of them were called Sunut, which is also the title for physicians or doctors, because they were divine healers and healeresses. So she waged war to kill the enemy in the community as a warrioress, but she also killed cancerous and bacterial cells and so forth, viral agents and so forth, as a healeress. So she has both of those functions within her, a divine killer a divine healeress. This is the function of Sekhmet, and when you look at her cosmology in ancient Kemet and so forth, and within the Akan tradition, you find these qualities manifest. Here's the key. The word for war and warriors and so forth is Sa in the Akan language. To wage war is to Sa, to wage war. Sa means war. Safo are the group of people, foe, who engage Sa, war. Sa means war. Safo are the warrior class and so forth. Abena is Sa, a warrioress. But then Sa also means to vindicate, to bring an end to cut into and so forth. Oyade Sa means to heal and healing. Oyade means illness. Sa means to bring an end to illness. Oyade Sa means to bring an end to illness or healing. Oyade Safo are the group of people, foe, who bring an end to Sa or cut into or destroy Sa. Oyade, illness. That's the term for doctors or physicians. Oyade Safo, the ones who Sa or cut into or destroy or bring an end to Oyade, illness. So Sa means to cure, to bring an end to illness. Sa also means warrior or warrioress, to wage war. Esa also means three. The third deity is called Esa in the Akan cosmology. The third planet or third orb, third day of the week, is the planet Abena or Bena. So you have Awusi is number 1. That's Alsar. Ajwa is number 2, deal with Monday. And then Bena and Abena share the planet, the male and female aspects of the planet Bena and Abena. She's number 3, he's number 4. And Sa is the name for the number 3. It's also the function of Sekhmet. Sa meaning to wage war. Sa also meaning to heal, to cure illness. She is the warrioress. Sa, she's also the healeress. Sa, she's also number 3. Sa. That's the numerology, the Nkanesem of that divinity. Then you look at number 4. The term for 4 is N9 in Akan, meaning 4. And 9 meaning 4. Even when you look back, the former Secretary General of the United Nations, Kofi Annan or Annan, that means Kofi, who was the 4th born. But N9 means 4. So when number 11, when Duko said, Echo, stand still, that's number 1, stand still. And no, stand still, that's number 2, stand still. Esa, he was talking to Abena, Sekhmet. Number 3, Esa, stand still. Then he said, N9, number 4, you. Number 4, you stand still. N9, N-A-N, 9 or N9. The third is Abena, and then the 4th deity amongst the 11 Akradinbosom is Bena. You have Abena, then you have Bena. Abena is number 3. That's the sacred number, Sa. And she's the warrioress, Sa. She's the healeress, Sa. She's number 3, Sa, third planet and so forth. Then you have N9, Bena, the male divinity. Bena is a warrior, male divinity operating through that red planet and so forth. He's called Heru Desher, or the red Heru in ancient Kemet. He's also called Herakuti in ancient Kemet. In the cosmology of ancient Kemet, because of the war he waged against the enemies of Ra and so forth, his blacksmiths were his followers. They were his priests and priestesses, but they were also his warriors and so forth. And Ra declared that there needed to be statues of the blacksmiths who were the followers and fighters for Heru Behudet, who followed him and helped him in his warfare against the enemies. It was also decreed that a metal statue of Heru Behudet be established and so forth because of the work that he did. He was the divinity of hot, metal, war, fire, the red planet Heru Desher and so forth, talking about Mars and so forth. And in Akan culture, Benna, the root is ben, bere, meaning red, to become red, and hot by boiling and so forth. It's the red planet. He's the male divinity of the red planet. Benna is the divinity of hot metal and war and so forth. Hot metal is talking about metal casting. One of the terms for metal casting in Akan is gu. The Ogu Fo is the group of people, Fo, who engage the gu process of metal casting. So the Ogu Fo are the Ogu people, the metal casters. Singular form is Ogu Ni, the metal caster. Benna is the divinity of hot metal and war. He's the Ogu Ni, part of the head of the Ogu Fo, or the Ogu group. This is the same, of course, as Ogu in Ebe and Fon and Vodun, as the deity of metal and iron and so forth, and the planet Mars and the warrior and so forth. He's Ogun in the Yoruba tradition. Of course, these languages are related. Therefore, the praise name or Umrane of Benna in Akan culture is Gu, meaning metal caster. But another term for metal caster is Onain Fo, one of the group of people, Fo, who engage the Onain process, which is metal casting. So Gu means metal casting, but Onain means metal casting. At the same time, and 9 is number 4. The fourth deity out of the 11, Awusi Alsar is first, Ajwa Alset is second, third is Abena, she's Etsa, number 3, Sa, warrioress, Sa, divine healeress. Then number 4 is Benna, her counterpart. He's number 4, which is at 9. Benna is also 9, the metal caster. Gu means metal casting, but at 9 means metal casting as well. So now you have the divinity called N9 in the Akan cosmology, but that number N9, 4 also has to do with his function as 9, metal caster, waging war and so forth, but also forging and the metal foundry, the iron foundry and so forth, developing that metal within the earth and everything else that has to do with strength and power, and even with iron is facilitating the proper flow of blood and everything else because it carries life force energy, all these different things. So now we're proving that these terms for the numbers are also defining the functions of the deities in creation. Numbers are associated with the functioning of the deities in creation. If you can't tie a number to a divinity of force in nature in creation, and then that force in nature is governing the head of, the individual, then you don't understand anything about quote unquote numerology. Just taking numbers and saying this number means foundation and this number means creativity and that's meaningless. It means absolutely nothing. If you don't know who the deity is, if you can't invoke the divinity, if you can't communicate with the divinity, if you don't know what their function in creation is, if you don't know how to align with them, if you don't know the offerings that you give them and the offerings are associated with the number of the divinity, therefore, Abena, since she's Esa, number 3, then if you're giving an offering, you're giving her 3 pieces of that kind of food or 3 aspects of that kind of mineral or whatever it is. If N9, you're giving 4 to Benna and so forth, because once again, just like the oscillating tuning forks, when you have 2 entities or 2 pieces of an offering together, they generate a certain field of energy. You have 3 in a triangular form, they generate another field of energy. That's a welcome mat for Abena. You have 4 pieces of an offering that generates a different field of energy that becomes a quote-unquote welcome mat or resonates at the frequency of the divinity, Benna, and so forth. Every one of these divinities, their energy radiates a certain frequency of vibrations, and when you match that through offerings or ritual invocation, even through the drum beats and how they are associated with the numbers of the divinities and so forth, dance, steps, and movements associated with the numbers of the divinities and so forth, ritual song, ritual prayer associated with the numbers, even the syncopation and the relationship between those words and how they're spoken through chant or through ritual prayer associated with the number of the divinities. Nkanesem is different from quote-unquote numerology. So let's go through some of the other divinities as well. So even if you go back to number one, Eko, that's the term for one, and you'll see Baako, meaning one in Akan, but the root is Ko, meaning one. So the first divinity out of the 11 Akradinbosom is Awusi, which is Asar. In our Akradinbosom book, you'll see at the end of the section on Awusi, on Asar, we talk about the sacred number of Asar being one. One in the sense of not only first, but one being singular, solo, independent. One having to do with establishment or establishing or beginning. Awusi or Asar has a regulatory function in creation. When you look at the cosmology of Awusi or Asar, he's the one who establishes civilization. Aset perpetuates or continues what has been established. It's similar to the penetration of the sperm cell with regard to the ovum that initiates the process, and then the ovum takes what's within the sperm cell. There's a fusion that takes place and then perpetuates that process, or there's a continuity. There's an expansion and there's a contraction. That one is the expansion, the two is the contraction. Just like we have that one oscillating tuning fork, then you put another one there, it creates a field of energy between the two, and there's a contractive force and magnetic force that takes place when you create that field by placing the other instrument near the other one. So that one is establishment of something that had either never been done before, or a renewal of a process that had decayed or degenerated and now it's being restored. So that establishment of civilization, foundation of civilization, that begins with that planting of that seed, that one. Awusi governs the endocrine system. The pituitary gland is the master gland of the body. The pineal gland is supportive of the pituitary, but the pituitary gland is the master gland and so forth, secreting hormones that send directives out to the various glands and organs and so forth, chemical directions that regulate the functions of the other glands. That's a unitary function coming from that entity, from that pituitary gland that regulates the functions of other glands. So Awusi is the firstborn son of Geb and Nut. Then, of course, you have Aset, and then you have Set and Nebuchadnezzar. But Awusi is the firstborn, the first to emerge and so forth. In Akan culture, when we talk about twins being born and so forth, you have Asar and Aset, a set of twins, Set and Nebuchadnezzar. That's another set of twins. Those are the two sets of twins born of Geb and Nut, earth, crust, and sky. But in Akan culture, as well as in Yoruba culture, when a set of twins are born, the first twin that comes out of the womb is actually the younger, and the elder or elderess is the one that comes out second. Because the first one that comes out scouts out the terrain and clears the way for the second one to arrive. This is why the Queen Mother's throne in the Akan tradition is senior to the King's throne. The Ohema Gwa, the Queen Mother's Egwa or throne, is senior to the Ohenigwa or the King's Egwa or throne. First, the king comes out. Asar was born. He came out first. He was the firstborn. Clears the way, establishes a precedent, and then the Queen Mother comes out. Aset comes out afterwards. And we show that relationship when you look at the throne making up the name of Asar. Asi is the throne in the Medu through the hieroglyphs, and then the symbol of the eye, Edi, the eye comes after that. So it's S, Adi or Asadi and so forth, the throne, and then the eye. and sometimes the eye is up under the throne. Set's name is the throne itself, and then the loaf that represents the sound for T, the contractive force. But Sarah's name is the throne with the eye coming from under the throne. The eye coming under the throne is the firstborn child coming out first, scouting out, seeking out, looking out, surveying the terrain and so forth, and preparing the way for the coming of the elderess, which is Set. So, Asar establishes a precedent. He comes out first, he's born first, Ekon, one, first. That's why he's called Eko, as the Akradinbosom, the first Akradinbosom, the first divinity. He's Ekon, the first one. He establishes civilization, he establishes a precedent, and then you look, that's in the world. Then when Asar is killed and so forth, but then he goes through the death process and purifies the death process and the funerary process. He's called Asi in Akan. He's also called Awusi. Awu means death. Si means purification. So Awusi is purifying the death process. He's also called Ayisi in Akan. Ayi means funerary process, which is funerary ritual. Si means to purify and establish. So Ayisi means the purification and establishment of the funerary process, purification of the death process. This is why, and he shows us how to become one of the Nananom Nsamafo, the honored elder or elderess ancestral spirit. This is why in ancient Kemet, Asar, once he makes his transition and goes into the ancestral realm, he's purified, mummified, and so forth, and his spirit is taken by Ra, and then Atem declares Asar the head of all of the divinities. And you'll see that in chapter 17 of the Runu Pert Imheru, the so-called Book of the Dead. He's placed as the head of the divinities and has a regulatory function with regard to the other deities. Not because he's the oldest divinity, Khan, Kayat, and Hehu, and Nun, and Nut, and Ran, Rad, and so forth, and Ptah, and Atem, and so forth. These deities are older than Asar. They have a primordial function, but with regard to the renewal of cycles of life on earth as we're living day to day, the Akradinbosom, with regard to Asar, he's the head of that cycle and so forth. So he was placed at the head of the divinities, the number one, the head of the divinities, Ekon, in creation as we're operating day to day. But when he made his transition and went to the ancestral realm and it purified the death process, purified the mummification process, purified the funerary process, and so forth, then he became known as Khanit Amintiu, the first or foremost of the Westerners, the first or the foremost of those who went to the beautiful West, the first or the foremost of those who went to the ancestral realm. And by his example, showing you how to transition as from an elder or elderess, one of the Nananom Umpanyifo, into the ancestral realm as one of the Nananom Unsamanfo. How to be placed in the ancestral realm as an honored ancestor or honored ancestress, as opposed to just a person who made their transition who was still uncultivated spiritually and still trying to figure their way out. He established the precedent for civilization in the world. He was the firstborn, first to establish the precedent. When he transitioned, he became Khanit Amintiu, the first, foremost of the Westerners, the first of the Amintiu, the first of the beautiful West. That is his function, establishing precedent in the physical world and also in the spirit realm. That's why he's called Ekon, meaning first or one in Akan. The number of the divinity, Ekun, is the praise name of the divinity, Ekun, and it defines the function of the deity, Awusi, who's the first of the Akradinbosom, Sunday, the day of the sun, and so forth, the first celestial orb, the first divinity. He establishes precedent in the physical world, establishes precedent in the ancestral realm, and in the story of how the Abosom came into the world, he's called Ekun, and so forth. The number defines the function of the divinity. It's always tied to the divinity. The next number is Enu, which is 2. We already talked about Esa and 9, which is 3 and 4, which is Abina and Bina. But Enu is number 2. When you look at the term Enu, when you look in the Akan language and you look at the dialectical variants, Enu and Ni are both dialectical variants for the term of a term for mother. Who's the great mother amongst the Akradinbosom? We said Al-Sar or Awusi governs the endocrine system. We talked about Abina and Bina governing the lymphatic system and the immune system. Set, who is called Ajwa, who's the second divinity, the divinity of the moon. The first divinity is Awusi, governing the sun, an aspect of the sun. Ajwa, governing the female aspect of the moon. That's number 2. In the line of the Akradinbosom, she's called Enu in the story, which means number 2. The moon is number 2 and so forth. And Enu also means mother. Set or Ajwa governs the reproductive system, and we're talking about in that capacity the womb and the birth canal. She governs the womb and the birth canal as the great mother who's gestating the child to give birth to the child and so forth. Of course, you see Set as the pregnant woman and so forth, and you also see her nursing Heru on her lap, which is iconic, imagery and so forth. But she is the great mother of childbirth and labor and nativity and so forth, all of that. Enu, she's the mother. Enu is number 2. Enu associated with the womb. Enu associated with the moon itself, which is the great womb. It reflects the light of the sun. It's the cool magnetic energy that draws the energy of the sun, just like the ovum draws in the sperm cell and collapses around it and takes what was in the sperm cell, fuses that energy and makes something out of it and begins that gestation. The moon takes the light of the sun, pulls it into itself. That's why it's reflective and so forth. And it transforms that energy, and then it affects the earth itself. The waters of earth, the tides of earth are affected by the gravitational pull of the moon. Your rising of your tides, the water in your body, over 70+% water in your body, when your water rises or when you're breathing and you hold in or retain more water from the air and from the food and liquids you drink at certain times of the month or certain times of the day, or even during ritual. So you become full of water and your tides begin to rise, and you become more cool and introspective and introverted and so forth. Ajwa or Set, the great mother, is affecting your rising of your tides. So, Enu, meaning mother. Enu, meaning 2. Enu, associated with the second orb, which is the moon. Enu, title, praise name of Ajwa. The number is associated with the deity. So that's Asar, Awusi, number 1, Ekun. Ajwa, Set, number 2, Enu, the great mother. Esa, number 3, is Abina, number 3, the third divinity in this list of Akradinbosom. Saw many war, saw so many healers, saw so many number 3. And 9, number 4, which is a title of metal caster, which is Bina, the 4th divinity. Then you get to Enum, which is 5. And when you look at the term Enum, this is the 5th divinity. So in the story it says, he told Enum, stand still. The 5th divinity, now you're looking at the 5th divinity in this cycle, which is Akua, which is Nebuchadnezzar in ancient Kemet. She's Agberu in the Yoruba tradition, the wife of Eshu. She's Nebuchadnezzar, the wife of Set in ancient Kemet. She's Koni, the wife of Legba in Vodun. She's Akua, the wife of Awuku. Akua, the wife of Kweku Anansi in Akan. And of course, she also governs the Akua Ba doll, the quote-unquote fertility doll. That's the Akua doll, the Ankh, and so forth in the Akan tradition. But in Noon 5, fifth divinity, number 5, she's the fifth divinity. Now you're getting into the planet, Awuku, Akua. Male and female forces that operate through that planet, so-called Mercury and so forth. But Akua, she governs the renal system in the body. When you look at our article on Akua, we talk about the renal system. She regulates fluid balance in the body, also mineral balance in the body. That's with the renal system, the kidneys and the ureters and the bladder and so forth. Of course, it has to do with the excreting function, the excretory function, but it's the kidneys are regulating fluid balance and mineral balance in the body. Those two the two organs, the kidneys. When you look up in the sky, you'll see that she has titles in Akan culture that show that she's governing the gray clouds and so forth that release the water. That is the renal system and so forth. The clouds are like those kidney structures. When you look at the Adinkra symbolism and so forth, in the same structure, you'll find that this is what we're dealing with. We have all that in the article on Akua, but just like she regulates fluid balance in the body and mineral balance in the body through the water system within the body or the water system within Earth, that renewal system of water within Earth is the rain waters and so forth. She governs the rain waters as well as the dew that manifests, that has to do with regulating fluid balance on Earth, taking water from the oceans, the lakes, ponds, streams, and redistributing that water to all the dry parts of Earth that the lakes and rivers and streams and so forth would never touch. But when it rains, that water is redistributed to the dry parts of Earth to rejuvenate Earth and so forth. She governs that process of drawing that water and holding it in those organs and then releasing it for that renewal, the rainwater as well as the dew. So that's a lactation kind of function. You'll see that Nebet Het is the wet nurse of Heru. She's nursing Heru. That's a lactation function. She's releasing that water. She's regulating balance, fluid balance, mineral balance. When Heru is rising up, and he's going to grow up to defeat Set and restore balance to creation and so forth, and take his rightful place as ruler. She's regulating fluid balance and mineral balance so he can engage that process. She's the wet nurse of Heru. That lactation function is that releasing of water. Same as the rainwater and so forth. When the rainwater is falling and you see the greenery rise up, and in ancient Kemet you see the little baby Heru rising up out of the opening lotus plant or the Seshen. When the rainwater is falling, that's nourishing the earth. It's nursing the shoots and so forth. When Nebet Het, the rainwater, is nursing the shoot or nursing the baby Heru who's going to grow up and defeat Set and so forth, this is what's taking place. So that term Noon, which is 5, the fifth divinity, is also a term that means to nurse. It's a term that means to nurse in Akan. It also means to nurse in ancient Kemet. She's that nurse mother of Heru, that lactating function and so forth. And then Nunu also means rain or evening dew. So the dew that you find in the evening as well as the dew you find in the morning, that's governed by Nebet Het. She's the nurse mother. She's regulating fluid balance and mineral balance in the body through the rainwater. Noon and Noon, all those are definitions of the term and Noon. Nursing, rainwater, dew, and so forth are and Noon. That's also her title as the fifth divinity and Noon. So the number is associated with the functioning of the deity and the release of that divinity's energy. Now we get to Insia, which is 6, and then you have Set, which is Kwekwanansi, which is the 6th divinity. When you look at the way the number 6 is written in the Medutu, you have the 3 on the top and you have the 3 on the bottom. That's the way they structure it in the hieroglyphs in the Medutu in ancient Kemet. Sia means 6 in Akan, the 6th divinity. He's number 6. But then you also have Sa or Sia in ancient Kemet, which is a term for 6 as well. So there's a balance. There's 3 on the top, 3 on the bottom. That's the way the iconography or the Medutu, the iconography is set up. Then you look at the function of Kwaikwanansi. He is the divine messenger. And we also should mention Nebuhet or Akua. She's the divine courieress. She carries the offerings in her basket. You see the basket on her head. That defines her as Nebuhet. You see she has the basket on her head, the vessel on her head. One of her praise names in Akan is Kukua, which means an earthen vessel. She carries the offerings that we give to the divinities in her vessel and so forth. She's the courieress. And her vessel, you look in the clouds, those are the vessels that carry that offering of rainwater and so forth. And once it's released, it renews the fluid balance and mineral balance and so forth. Her breasts are the vessels that release that nourishment as the wet nurse. The kidneys are vessels that maintain fluid balance and release that water, regulate the water system in the body and so forth. So she's the courieress carrying those sacred offerings from us to the divinities so we can receive what we need from the divinities and the ancestresses and ancestors. She's the courieress. Her counterpart, Kwaikwanansi, is the messenger. He carries the messages back and forth. She carries the offerings back and forth in her vessel. He carries the messages back and forth. He's the divine messenger. He's also divine trickster. But he's the messenger. Of course, in Yoruba, Eshu is the divine trickster, but he's also the messenger. In Vodun, Legba is the trickster, but he's also the messenger. He goes back and forth from quote-unquote heaven to earth, carrying the messages of us, the prayers, invocations to the Abosom, as well as the Nananom and Samanfo, and carries their messages back to us. He's the nervous system within the body, regulating and carrying these electrical messages back and forth from the brain to all the different parts of the body and so forth through the world wide web, which is Kwaku Anansi's web. Anansi means spider. He's the great spider. There's a web of energy or tumi, divine power that he weaves that permeates all of creation, the black substance of space, all the planets, sun, moon, and stars, and plant life, animal life, mineral life, and Afurakani, human life, have a place on that divine web of energy that permeates all of creation, and therefore we are connected through his web, and he's the great divine spider that carries the messages that we send through that web of energy, and he takes it back and forth, just like he's the divine spider within the web of energy within your body, the nervous system, and it carries electrical impulses from the brain throughout all parts of the body. He's using his web to send those messages everywhere. In the heavenly realm on top, in the earthly realm below. There's the 3 on the top and the 3 on the bottom. You look at the body of the spider, you have the bulbous portion on the bottom, and then you have the head and on the top and so forth. 2 major aspects. You have the legs on the top, the legs on the bottom. You see Sia or Insia 6, and also Sia in ancient Kemet, meaning 6, and you have the 3 on the top, 3 on the bottom. You have a balance of what's going to heaven and going to earth, what's going to the spirit realm, what's coming into the physical realm. The message is going back and forth. He's Sia or Insia. He's the one in between heaven and earth and so forth. And that's very key, because what you have is you have Echo, which is 1, and Nu, which is 2, Esa, which is 3, and Na, and 9, which is 4, and Num, which is 5. And then you have Nsia, which is 6. You have 5 before Nsia. Then Nsia is 6. And then you have Nson, Nwochwe, Nkron, Edu, and Duko. You have 5 after Nsia. You have 5 divinities in front of him and 5 divinities behind him, and he's the one in the middle regulating what's in front of him and behind him, what's above him and below him. He's right in the middle. He's Kwaku Anansi, who's going from heaven to earth, carrying the messages back and forth. That's why they say he's the governor of Ashe to a certain extent in the Yoruba tradition. He's regulating the Tumi, which is the term for power. Ashe and Akan is Tumi, it's Ashe in Yoruba. But since he weaves a web of Tumi, a network or a divine spider's web of Tumi that permeates all of creation, he regulates the messages being sent throughout that quote-unquote nervous system in creation. He's the nervous system, the peripheral nervous system within the great divine body of Supreme Being, but he has to be able to go to the heavenly realm, and in our bodies, the head region above the neck is the heavenly realm, and then the earthly realm is below the neck. The neck is the transitional point and so forth, but the earthly realm is below the neck and so forth. He has to be able to go, between those two worlds. So Nsia, he's sitting right in between. He's number 6. He's the 6th divinity in Nsia, number 6 in Energic-frequency, Nsia, and he has that function. And of course, when you look in our Akradinbosom series, we published book number 1, dealing with the nature of the Akradinbosom, as well as the 7-day week and the origin of the 7-day week in the Akan tradition, how it was taken up into Sumer and so forth, and the nature of incarnation and reincarnation, the nature of the Okra, the soul, the divine consciousness, how that's implanted in the head of the person pre-incarnation. So when they're born into the world, they carry that deity's energy. We go into all of that kind of detail in Volume 1. In Volume 2, we examine Awusi and Ajua, which is Asara and Aset, dealing with Sunday and Monday. Then Volume 3 and Volume 4 will be published this month, but we have shorter articles on all 11 deities. So far, we have the book on Awusi and Ajua, and we have the book coming out, 2 more books coming out this month on Bena and Abena and Awuku and Aku and so forth. So the information we're talking about now, some of the information is in the information already published in the first 2 books, but then we have more books coming out. Some of the information is in the articles that we've had out for a number of years on the website, but the details that we're giving now are going to be in the books, and those are the books that will be given out at our Dubaako Akradinbosom training intensive and ritual retreats. That we're gonna mention that a little bit in a few minutes as we wrap it up. But we have those retreats coming up at the end of this month in Savannah, then June 2nd, Washington, D.C., June 9th, Atlanta, Georgia, June 15th, Philadelphia, June 16th, Toronto, Canada, June 29th, Durham, North Carolina. So we have some seats still available. If you would like to register, you must register now. We have a deposit option for registration. The Savannah retreat, the deposit option is $50. That's 50%. It's a 2-day event. And the balance payment, the balance installment, of course, is the final 50% that you can pay later in May. All of the other retreats for Washington, D.C. in June, and Atlanta in June, and Philadelphia, and Toronto, and Durham, those are 1-day, all-day training, intensive and ritual retreats, like an entire day, morning to late afternoon. Those are $60, so the deposit is $30 up front to reserve your space, and then the final $30 you can pay later in May. For the retreat funds, you get the 4 books, volumes 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's part of the fee. Then it's included in the fee, those 4 books, and then also a vegan meal, and then also, of course, the training itself. So that's what the fee is for. The 4 books, which normally costs $40, $10 per book anyway. When you purchase our books online, you'll see that the Akradinbosom books are $10 each. We're going to have all 4 of them, so you get those 4 books for your $60 fee, as well as vegan food, as well as the training itself. So, but we'll get into that a little bit in a few minutes after we finish this piece. I just wanted to let people know that those books are coming out. We already have volume 1 and 2 out. Volume 3 and 4 are coming out this month. But we do have some articles that some of this information is in there, but as far as the information about the Nkanesem, the numerology piece, we had a portion of it in volume 2, but the rest of it will be given at the retreat because it's not in the articles. It will be in the books that are being published, but we don't have it published in the articles that are online right now. So you will get that information in detail. We're just summarizing it now, but you'll get that information in detail at the retreats in the books. So song is number 7. That the 7th divinity is Heru, or Yao, the divinity Yao. And when you look at the divinity Yao, one of the titles, if you look at the term song, it means 7, but song also in the Akan language means pure, unmixed. In fact, we're going to give you a real quick, a direct translation. If you look in the Asante Fanti dictionary, just want to give you a quick little short nuance, and I'll give you the page number as well so you can check it out for yourself. Give me 1 second for that. So first of all, Som means 7. You'll find that So means up, above, heavenly regions. Also Soro, that is the title of Yao, or Soro, which means the divinity in the heavens, and that's Horo in ancient Kemet, Shoro, Horo in ancient Kemet, which is Heru and so forth. And Akan is Soro, or Soro, means the one up in the heavens, you know, the falcon, the hawk flying high in the sky and so forth. The face in the sky, you see the head of Heru in the sky. His right eye is the sun. His left eye is the moon that he inherited from Ra and so forth when he became ruler. That's why he's the one up above in the heavens and so forth. He's called Soro in Akan and Horo in ancient Kemet. But at the same time, the term Ason means 7, but Son also means, on one hand, safe and sound, unharmed, unhurt, secure, and whole. But it also means pure, unmixed, unmixed, pure, mere, only, and so forth. Look at the cosmology of ancient Kemet. Of course, he's the one up in the heavens, his face is in the heavens and so forth. The hawk is one of the highest flying, and the falcon one of the highest flying birds with the sight where they can see up from the heavenly space all the way down on the ground to be able to drop down and capture prey and so forth. So they have that, quote, hawk eye and so forth, that capacity to see. They're the fastest flying birds and so forth. So they have power, they have acumen, they have perception, they have force, they have fire and so forth, but pure and unmixed. Alsar becomes ruler. He establishes the precedent. Set is the queen mother, but then Set comes along and kills Alsar, then takes over control of the country and rules the country as a tyrant and so forth. And then there's a decay in the society. But then Heru is conceived by the spirit of Alsar connecting with Set. That's where they get the story of the Immaculate Conception and all of that nonsense. But the real story is Alsar and Set, the spirit of Alsar impregnating Set and so forth. They conceive Heru, who is the rightful heir to the throne. He's the pure one. He's the descendant. He's the pure, unmixed one. He doesn't have any blemishes and so forth. He's the one who is destined to rise up, restore the empire back to its proper state. He's the revolutionary who's going to return, and volve. Volve means to turn, so revolution, to go back when the Earth moves around the sun and returns to its point of origin. It's made a complete revolution. So when we talk about revolve or returning, you're returning back to that previous state, that original condition, that pure, unadulterated, unpolluted, pristine condition. That's a revolt or a revolution, a complete revolution, a return back to your point of origin. So when Heru is born, you're returning back to that original divine lineage, that divine lineage of who is supposed to be the rightful heir to the throne to restore the empire back to its former state. A song, pure, unmixed, song, safe and sound, unharmed, unhurt, secure, and whole. And song number 7. And song, he's the 7th divinity. And then you have the sacred animal totem of Heru, or Yao. It's the falcon, of course, as well as the hawk in ancient Khanit, the falcon and the hawk in the Hoodoo tradition. That is called Akroma in Akan. Akroma is the sacred falcon, also a species of hawk, Akroma in Akan. There's a certain species of that hawk called the Asan Kroma Ni. That is a sacred Achinebois for Yao. That's a sacred Achinebois for the divinity Osoro Yao, which is Heru Yao or Heru. Asan means 7. He's Asan Kromani. That means he's the Asan Kroma, that Asan hawk. Of course, Heru has the head of a falcon or hawk in ancient Khanit. That's a sacred animal totem. In the Akan tradition, Akroma is the hawk or the falcon, and this particular hawk or falcon is the Asan Kroma, the Asan hawk or the Asan falcon. That is a sacred animal totem for the divinity, and he's Asan, he's the 7th divinity, he's number 7. So he's the pure one, unmixed one, secure, whole, safe, sound, operating through the Asan and Kroma, the falcon, Asan, pure, Asan, unmixed, Asan, safe, sound, secure, and whole, restoration, Song, number 7. He's the 7th divinity. The deity's function is associated with the number and the energetic expressions of that unique configuration of vibrations emanating from that divinity manifests that number as well. We talked about the 1 oscillating, tuning fork, then 2, and then 3 in the geometric form. Then you have 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 7 sided polygon and so forth. What is the energetic expression when life force energy is circulating through a 7-sided polygon? What is taking place? Or division of cells in that form? What kind of energetic expression is radiating through that? This is what we're talking about when we're talking about numbers. Okay, so we're getting close to the end of the broadcast, so we're going to move a little bit quickly through the last couple of ones. So if you look at number 8, Wo Chue, which is number 8, after you have Yao, who's, by the way, operating through the planet Yao, which is so-called Jupiter. Jupiter is Yu Pater, or Yao Pater, or Pater of Father Yao, became Father Yu and Jupiter and Jupiter, but that comes from Yao, the deity Yao, which is Heru. He's called Yao in Akan. He's also called Osoro in Akan. But Yao is also a title for Heru in ancient Khanit, which means fighter or combatant, Yao. So Heru, Yao, Horu, Yao. In ancient Khanit is Soro Yao in Akan, because Yao means confrontational, aggressive, warlike. In the Akan language, Yao means the same thing in ancient Khanit. So operating through the planet Yao, which is Jupiter, and you see the great red spot of Jupiter in the exact same form of the great eye of Heru and so forth. So, and we go into detail about that in the publication. But then the next divinity, Nwochwe, is number 8. Nwochwe, the 8th divinity, is Aba, who is called Nekebet in ancient Kemet. She's Ayaba in Vodun. She's Oba, the first wife of Shango in the Yoruba tradition. She is Aba in Akan. And females born on Abada or Thursday, some are called Ya, some are called Aba. Ya is a divinity, Aba is a divinity, just like Oya is a divinity, is an Orisha, and Oba is an Orisha in Vodun. Those are two female divinities. They were both at some point married to Shango. Oya and Oba in Vodun, that's Avejida, which is the same as Oya, which is the same as Wachet, which is the same as Yanakan. And then Ayaba, which is the female divinity of the home and hearth. She's the same as Oba, the Orisha Oba, wife of Shango, and the Abosom, Aba in Akan. That's Nekebet is Aba, Wachet is Ya. So when you see somebody named Ya in Akan, she's born on Thursday. If you find somebody named Aba in Akan, she's born on Thursday. One is a child of Wachet, the divinity Ya. The other one is a child of Nekebet, the divinity Aba, which is information we brought forward. They also govern Uranus and Neptune, their planetary homes and so forth. This is information that we brought forward. We were able to prove other Akan groups had no knowledge of who these divinities are. So we brought this information back to the forefront. Now, the 8th divinity, Awochwe. The root Awo means mother. Tre means to grab, to pull, to drive, to push, to drag out, to pull out, and so forth. But Awochwe also means uterus or a matrix. But the root Awo means mother. If you look at Aba, which is a title of Nekebet in ancient Kemet, she's the vulture. She's the great vulture with expanded wings and so forth. She's the protectress of divine sovereignty. You see, she's the sacred animal totem of the queen mothers. She's a vulture, and the word for vulture in ancient Kemet is Mut. The word for mother in ancient Kemet is Mut. So she's the vulture, Mut. She's the great mother, Mut. They'll show her suckling the child as a king, as a pharaoh. So you see Aset, she's suckling the child as a baby. You know, the baby Heru, who's going to grow up to be the sovereign. When you see Nekebet, she's typically not suckling the baby. She's suckling what appears to be a young child with his crown on. He's the young quote-unquote prince who is going to be king. She's the great mother, the protectress of divine sovereignty or royal sovereignty. She's nursing or nourishing the young sovereign in his role as a sovereign. Not the young baby to develop his immune system so he can grow up and, develop as a child, but she's nurturing the king and the mindset of the sovereign. So you see her suckling, and she's called Nekit. Nekit means the pendulous breast and so forth, and she's suckling the royal. But then on the other side, when the old woman, the great mother, the elderess has the pendulous breast, that's an indication that she's one of the ones who's connected to the quote-unquote mothers, as they're called in Yoruba, the Iyami, the mothers, my mothers, or the Aj and so forth, the Abayifo, Inakan, misnomer witches and so forth, women who are postmenopausal. They have greater influence and have the capacity to wield influence amongst those spirits that they've given birth to, ancestral spirits and so forth, so they can wield that Bayi energy or that Aj energy or that Azay energy and so forth. So they're nurturing the sovereignty, but they're also nurturing that capacity as well. But Nwochwe, 8. Nwo is the great mother. Nwochwe is a term for uterus of matrix, talking about that mothering energy, but you're not talking about giving birth to a child, but giving birth to a sovereign, a king. That's why you see Nekabet as the great vulture flying over the sovereign when he's at war. She's accompanying him in war, flying over his chariot with the great eye, protecting him. Her great wingspan is protecting him while he's waging war against the enemy, and she's ensuring his victory. So she's nurturing or birthing as the uterus, as the matrix. She's birthing the sovereignty of the individual, suckling the individual as a sovereign, birthing the individual as a sovereign. Awotre is that uterus of matrix of sovereignty. It's also the term for 8. Awo being the great mother. Mut is the great mother. The term for mother. Mut is also the term for vulture. Mut is also the sacred Achinibwa of the queen mother and so forth, and they wear the mut or the vulture headdress. All of that is associated with Nwochwe or Awotre, the great mother, the matrix, the uterus matrix of the sovereign, but also the number 8, that's the divinity. 9th divinity, Nkron, is the word for 9. That's that set of energetic vibrations that you were to measure them, they will manifest that frequency of 9, expansions and contractions and so forth. Nkron means 9 in Akan, but Nkron, as the term in general, it means pure, sanctified, purified, quote unquote, holy and so forth. It means pure and unmixed, but it means unadulterated. Not just pure in the sense of like a newborn, but pure in the sense of unadulterated. One that has been restored, protected, and so forth. When you look at Yah, which is Wachet, which is the 9th divinity, it's a sacred number 9, and of course Oya is the same divinity in Yoruba, Vejida in Vodun, Wachet in ancient Kemet, Yah in Akan. Sacred number of Oya in Yoruba is 9. The sacred number of Yah in Akan is Nkron, which means 9. And it also means sacred, pure, sanctified, exalted, and so forth. So it's talking about pure in the sense of unadulterated. When you look at the sacred animal totem for Wachet, you typically see the cobra, the serpent. Sometimes it's a winged cobra, a winged serpent. She as well is the protectress of royal sovereignty. She destroys or attacks the enemy. She's the fire-spitting serpent. She's that spitting that venom, attacking the enemy, and of course, energetically, she's spitting that fire and so forth, spitting that venom to attack the enemy. She governs the northern Kemet, the red crown, the fiery red crown, protecting from, invasions from international outside of the country. And then you have Nekabet, who's governing the home and the hearth. She's wearing the white crown. She's in southern Kemet and so forth, where the capital is. But then you have Wachet, Yah, in northern Kemet, obliterating the enemy. Unadulterated and pure, she's destroying disorder. When you look at fire, like the fire-spitting cobra, the venom-spitting cobra, that fire that's on the forehead or the crown of the sovereign and so forth, that it begins to attack the enemy before the enemy even gets there. When you look at Wachet governing the magnetosphere, the magnetic field surrounding the earth, she's the electric, explosive, obliterating force of the magnetosphere, where you have Nekabet is the internal, inward, centripetal force. Wachet is the magnetic force. Wachet, or Yah, is the expansive, explosive, obliterating, centrifugal, external force. That's why she has the red crown, that explosive force. But that fire, that winged cobra, the wings have to do with expansion and fanning the flames of the fire of the life force energy. And then the cobra itself is that undulating force, that wave energy. So you have an expansive wing, fire, wing, expansive fire of wave energy. That magnetic field, even before someone gets to you, when you charge up or you use your wings to expand and fan the flames of your life force energy, your magnetosphere or your aura becomes so powerful and vibrant that it can repel negative entities, repel negative individuals, repulse individuals and so forth, repulse negative vibrations that are being, directed towards you and so forth. When you fan the flames of your life force energy to make yourself vibrant, you can be repulsive to anything that's out of harmony with order. That fire that you're fanning the flames with is a purificatory fire. It's unadulterated, so it can therefore support and sustain and protect the sovereignty of the nation because it's unadulterated. Heru, the king, and then later all the kings of ancient commanders, queen mothers, and so forth, they have Wachet on their crown, that's fire-spitting cobra on their forehead, because he has to be maintained, and she, the king or the queen mother, their sovereignty has to remain pure. That's the meaning of Nkron, but also unadulterated, Nkron. And she secures that capacity to be pure and unadulterated because she can destroy anything that's coming at them before it touches them. Before something gets to your aura, it's already destroyed by the fire. The corona of the sun is millions of degrees Fahrenheit. If there was a projectile sent towards the sun, it would burn up in the corona before it ever got to the body of the sun, because that field of energy around the sun, the sphere around the sun is so hot that it will obliterate anything before it can get to the body of the sun. Before something can get to your body, that purificatory fire that's pure allows you to maintain your unadulterated nature, because it's Nkron, it's a purificatory, sanctified, restorative fire. That's Nkron. 9, Nkron, the ninth divinity. Nkron, pure, purificatory, pure, unmixed, unadulterated. And then you also have Nkron, which is the root of Nkoron Ma, which is also on the feminine side, that sacred falcon or hawk as well. So that's the ninth divinity. That's why she's referred to as number 9 in the story of the divinities in Akan. And then you have Edu, which is number 10. This is the 10th divinity. That is Het Heru, which is Afur or Afia. 10th divinity. She's the 10th divinity in that list of 11 divinities governing the planet Venus, which is the planet Afi and so forth. This is Fida or Friday. Het Heru deals with the central force, that the precursor, that essential attraction, that's the precursor to procreative activity and the replenishment of its harmony. She draws us together, that force that draws the male and female together in a harmonious fusion, then draws the male and female organs together through harmonious fusion for procreative activity, and then draws the sperm and ovum together for harmonious fusion so conception can take place. So when you look at the term, for example, you look at the term Edu, which means 10. This is the 10th divinity, the planet Afi, and you know what her function is. Then you look at the number Edu, 10, and we'll give you, if you look in the Asante Fanti dictionary, if you look at the term Du and also Duru, D-U-R-U, the root is Du, and sometimes the term Duru is also used as well. So, do means to reach or arrive at. But then you have nduru. It means to reach or arrive at. But nduru can mean heavy, weighty, ponderous. So there's a proverb, asase yeduru. The earth, asase, has weight, or the earth is weighty or heavy or has substance. And it has substance because it has power. Now, do meaning to reach or arrive. Nduru meaning to reach or arrive, but also heavy, ponderous, weighty. And of course, Nduru and Ndu means medicine and from roots, trees, plant life, and so forth. But we're talking about Nduru meaning to descend into, to reach, to arrive, to descend into, and so forth. Weighty, heavy, ponderous. Look at the ramifications of something that reaches or arrives at a certain point. Do, then it descends into, kind of like descending the lightning. It talks about in the dictionary, duru, to descend into, like a lightning descending and striking and so forth. But do to reach or arrive, do to descend into, then do to become heavy or weighty. What are we talking about? That's a three-part approach. First, you reach or arrive at something, then you descend into something, then it becomes heavy or weighty. We talked about Heru governing the initiatory fusion of the Afurakani male, Afurakani female, for us to be drawn together. Then we're drawn together through the act of procreative activity, the sexual activity, and so forth, so that a conception can take place. The sperm cell reaches or arrives due at its location. Then it descends or alights into something, due. Then once it descends or alights into something, then there's a fusion of the sperm cell and the ovum cell, and then embryogenesis takes place, and cell mitosis and division takes place, and so forth. And then that cell begins to expand and grow and develop. It becomes weighty as something of substance, and it implants itself in the uterus. Due to reach or arrive, due to descend into, penetrate into, due to become heavy or weighty. You're talking about that initiatory fusion and conception and eventually implantation and so forth. That's what do, the 10th divinity governs. The initiatory fusion, imbalance, a balanced fusion, complementary fusion of Afurakani male, Afurakani female, expansion and contraction, the balanced fusion of male and female and so forth, reaching, arriving, penetrating, descending, and becoming weighty or something of substance. That's the 10th divinity. That's her function in creation. That's who Heru is. That's the process that she governs. Even with regards to her governing, art and creativity and music and so forth, there's something that needs to be birthed. Before it can be birthed, something has to be conceived, something that's never been conceived before. And what that is first you reach, arrive at a point, then you descend into something, then you cause something to be weighty. You generate these ideas in your mind, pulling together different sounds, pulling together different colors and shapes and so forth for music and for art and for dance movements or whatever it is. Before we finish, we have about a minute left in the broadcast, and we're not going to go too much into overtime. So what we're going to say right here is go to our Dubaako page, sign up for our training intensive and ritual retreat. We will be going through all of the Akradinbosom, all 11 deities. They govern our 11 body systems. They govern the 11 body systems within the Earth Mother and so forth. They govern the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies. They govern all natural cycles on Earth. They govern the deities that govern our Okra, our souls, our divine function in creation. We need to understand who these divinities are, how they manifest, how to give offerings to them, how to align with them, which ones govern money and so forth, which ones govern marriage, which ones govern. We need to know how these divinities operate. So this is where we're going to be going into detailed training, intensive, and ritual retreat. We have a few spaces left open for the different dates in different cities. So go to our website and check that out. All the information is on the website, the Dubaako page, and you can register there. And we're just going to go a little bit into overtime to finish this last divinity, which is Amen Men, which is Duko, which is number 11. That's 10 and 1. The final divinity, but going back to the 10th divinity or 11th divinity, which is 10 and 1. So you're going back to the first, but also the last, the first and the last at the same time. Amen Men is the divinity that, when you look at the deity Men in ancient Khanit, he governs that polar axis. He governs the skeletal system, but then you look at the central nervous system, the brain and the spinal column, you'll find that the brain and the spinal column are encased within the cranium and the vertebrae and so forth. That's the only system that's encased within the skeletal system. All the other organs and so forth are not encased within the skeletal system. So when we talk about the crown of Amen Men is the central nervous system, the brain and spinal cord, and you see his crown with the red ribbon coming out of the back and going all the way down to the ground and so forth. That's the manifestation of the central nervous system, but it's encased within his system, which is the skeletal system. We talked about that in the piece on the Akradinbosom, the 11 major deities. But men, he governs, on one hand, fertility. You see he has the erect phallus. He's constantly inseminating creation. But he's also, and his wife, of course, is Heru. So he's the great bull in the sky. She's the great cow in the sky. And he's constantly inseminating the great cow, and they give birth to creation and so forth. But he's also the mummified one. He's also the most ancient one, the one who preserves protocol, the one who preserves culture, and so forth. When one is mummified, he's impervious to decay and so forth. So you'll see he's the most ancient one, the preserved one. Those are his titles in ancient Khanit. He also has those same titles and functions in the Akan tradition as well. So he's constantly inseminating, recreating creation on the fertility side. That's why he has the erect phallus and so forth. But he's also mummified, purified in the white bandages. That has to do with the skeletal system that preserves the organs and structures and so forth, and makes sure everything is protected and preserved. The protocols of the body are preserved within that quote-unquote skeletal system, or mummified set of quote-unquote white bandages, which is the skeletal system. But he has the same role in the Akan tradition. That's why he's called the Ancient One. He's called Atoa Poma and Atoa Pim. They'll say he's the ever-ready shooter. They'll say, well, he's combat ready, but it doesn't really mean combat ready, ever-ready shooter. It's talking about his iconography in ancient Khanit is the one with the erect phallus, constantly shooting or inseminating Heru, constantly recreating creation, or constantly inseminating creation, the creative divinity. So as Dubaako, and he's Duko. Du means 10, Ko means 1. So that's 10 plus 1, which is 11. But also the same term, Dubaako, the more extensive term, that also means 11 as well. So he's at that end of the process. He's the final piece. Governs the planet Amini, which is Saturn, out of that cyclical manifestation of the planetary bodies and so forth, Sun, Moon, and those 5 planets. He's the one at the end of the process with the widest orbit and so forth, the one who has the most extensive influence, the one that's stretched out and, the farthest within those planets within the solar system, the inner planets and so forth, including the inner gas giants and all of that. So he's the one with the furthest reach, the greatest birth, the greatest orbit. He's all the way at the final reaches of the cyclical manifestation. That's why he's the one with the mummified bandages. He's the one who, when you look at the mummified bandages, that's the end. That's similar to your skin, the integumentary system. It's the greatest organ, the greatest eliminative organ of your body, but it's also the protector. Everything is encased within that. And then when you look at the mummified bandages of Amen Men, that's the final protection. When people will cut open the bandages, the white sonaro spring cutting open the bandages and looking at the mummies, it looks as though they were just, prepared as a mummified body thousands of years later, because we had the science down to a T, so to speak, where we were able to do that. Those bandages are the final, most external protection that you can have. It's the final piece. It's the furthest. Everything else is inside the bandages. Everything else is inside the reach or the birth or the orbit of Amen Men or Dubaako or number 11, the 11th divinity. So he was the one who was the leader. Duko or Dubaako in the story, he told his siblings, number 1, stand still, number 2, stand still, number 3, stand still, and going all the way down the line. When they went through their trials on earth, he was the one who made sure they were not killed. When they went through their trials in the heavenly realm, he was the one who directed them and made sure that they avoided being killed. When they went into the realm of Obedima, Owu Obedima and Owu Ba, the male and female force of death, he was the one who helped them avoid being trapped in that area and so forth. Dubaako or Duko, number 11, he was the one who protected all of the other divinities and made sure that they were able to survive and thrive and continue executing their function. So after he overcame the trials with Owu Obedima and Owu Ba, the male and female force of death, they made a deal with him. Owu Ba, the female force of death, told Duko or Dubaako, you basically confounded me at every turn. I can't defeat you. So you keep those who you want with you. But when it's time for me to take someone, then I'll give you an offering, and then you allow me to take who I need to take. And they made that deal. And then after that, it was established and decreed that Dubaako and his siblings would become what is known as the Abosom, those little Abosom in creation and so forth. And they say that's how the Abosom came to the world. They went through trials in heaven, trials on earth, trials in the heavenly realm, trials in the ancestral realm, overcame all those trials under the leadership and the guidance of the elder one, of the most, quote unquote, the most ancient one, the Duko, number 11. And that's why Amen Men is Duko, number 11 in ancient Kemet. He's the most ancient one in ancient Kemet. He's the mummified one in ancient Kemet. Same thing in the Akan tradition, and so forth. So, but we get into more detail about that when we're at the retreats. We'll be releasing the new books. We already have volume 1 and volume 2 out. Volume 3 and volume 4 will be released. You will get all 4 of those books at the retreat, as well as the vegan meals. We will be going all day long and so forth. So we'll also be talking about establishing a shrine to the Akradinbosom, the deity that governs your head. So it's a training, intensive, and ritual retreat. Of course, extensive question and answers and so forth. So we'll be going intensively on these deities. So when our people come out of this, they know not only who they are, but understand their relationship to these other forces in nature, even their relationship to the Orisha and the Vodou and so forth. We need to know as much about these divinities just as any other group knows about the deities in their tradition. And it's also when people who practice the Orisha tradition, the Vodou tradition, they study the culture of ancient Kemet and so forth. when you study the Akradinbosom, the deities of the 7 days of the week and so forth, you are studying the Orisha. You are studying the Vodou. You're studying the Arusi. And when you learn it from the Akan perspective, it simply enriches your understanding of the Orisha, just like when we study Pataki of the Orisha and so forth, that gives us a nuanced view of the Abosom, because we're talking about the same deity. So when you get it from the Akan perspective, you get a deep, nuanced view into the nature of the divinity that you already are familiar with. So when Yoruba people study the Akradinbosom, they have a greater understanding of the Orisha that they've been studying. When people who practice Vodou study the Akradinbosom and so forth, the same thing happens. When people have been studying the culture of ancient Kemet, they study the Akradinbosom, they see that we're still practicing the same tradition. And of course, we practice the Hoodoo tradition, which is Akan Ancestral Religion in North America. We've maintained these deities. This is why we can speak on them and write about them. We invoke these divinities. We have shrines to these deities. Spirit possession takes place. Spirit communication through divination takes place. So we have direct insight into them. And then we have the linguistic and cultural and cosmological information to simply corroborate and back up everything we have to say with regard to our experience with these deities. So this is what we will be getting into. We're going to end the broadcast here. If you have any questions, you can hit us up as well on Facebook and so forth. But we have a few spaces left over open to register for our retreats in these different cities. The first one coming up in a couple of weeks. So to register before the spaces are taken up, you can make a deposit and register tonight. Go to our ojirafo.com/dubaako.html site. We also have pages on Facebook with the information there, but you go to the site to register a deposit. 50% deposit will reserve your space. So again, Yedase, we thank you for tuning into this broadcast, and Yebeshiabio, we will meet again. That's up.